Grandma Eleanor moved through the house like a force that could not be ignored. Her eyes, sharp and unwavering, immediately found Alex. The bruise on his arm, still forming dark and angry, drew her full attention. She stepped closer, her small frame somehow radiating authority and power. Mark, who had been bragging loudly about his work, paused mid-sentence, the usual smugness vanishing under her gaze. Alex's mother froze, caught between fear, guilt, and helplessness. "Alex," Grandma said softly, yet firmly, as she lifted his sleeve with gentle hands. She didn't shout, didn't ask questions in the usual chaotic way this house had conditioned him to expect. She simply looked. And in that look, Alex felt seen and truly seen for the first time in years. He didn't have to explain. He didn't have to beg. Grandma knew. His mother stepped forward, trying to interject. "Eleanor, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think," Grandma interrupted, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. She turned her gaze sharply to Mark. "Did you do this to him?" Mark opened his mouth to respond, but words faltered. There was no bravado that could stand up to her. His usual intimidation tactics felt small, almost laughable under her steady eyes. Alex's mother stood frozen, unsure whether to defend her husband or the child she had raised. The truth sat heavy in the room, impossible to deny. Grandma Eleanor straightened, every movement deliberate. She was not angry in the petty way his mother feared. She was fierce in a way that demanded respect, demanded honesty, demanded protection for the boy who had been ignored for too long. "Alex, are you all right?" she asked softly. Her voice softened just enough to show care, but not enough to lose authority. Alex swallowed, feeling something inside him start to loosen. I'm okay," he said quietly. Kay hated how weak the words sounded, but they were the best he could manage. His body still ached, the bruises burning under the thin fabric of his shirt. But hearing Grandma speak like this, feeling her unwavering presence, he felt safer than he had in years. Mark shifted uncomfortably, stepping closer, attempting to regain control of the room. "He's exaggerating. It was an accident. We're having a holiday. Enough." Grandma's voice thundered, though she did not raise it. The word alone made Mark pause, his face losing color. "I have spent decades seeing families torn apart by lies, silence, and fear. This ends tonight. No more pretending. No more hiding abuse under the name of family." Alex's mother tried to protest, her voice faltering. "But it's Thanksgiving. We wanted peace." Grandma shook her head sharply. "Peace built on fear is not peace. It's submission. And I will not allow my grandson to submit to cruelty. Not tonight, not ever." Alex felt a small surge of hope mixed with relief. Finally, someone who understood. Someone who would fight for him, even if he felt too weak to fight for himself. He could hardly believe that this was happening. His grandmother, the woman he had always trusted, was standing up not just for him, but for the truth that had been ignored for too long. Mark's jaw tightened. His confidence cracked. "You're overreacting," he muttered. "It was nothing." Grandma Eleanor stepped forward, reducing the distance between them to nothing. Her eyes blazed with a fire that neither Mark nor anyone else could ignore. "Nothing? His bruises? His fear? Has been silenced for years under your so-called authority. If you think I will let you continue, you are gravely mistaken." Alex watched, holding his breath. He had waited years for this moment, though he had never allowed himself to hope. He could feel the tension in the air, thick and electric, as the silent truth of his abuse hung between them, undeniable, unyielding. Suddenly, the front door opened again. The sound startled everyone. Alex turned, expecting maybe a neighbor or an aunt. But it was Aunt Rose, Uncle Daniel, and Cousin Mia, all looking around with immediate recognition of the tension in the room. They had arrived, summoned by Grandma Eleanor. Their presence added weight, support, and a silent message. Alex was not alone. Mark's face paled. The room was no longer a place where he could assert dominance. Witnesses were everywhere. People who cared about Alex. People who would hold him safe. People who would not allow abuse to go unchallenged. Grandma Eleanor looked around, letting her gaze settle on each family member briefly. "You are here," she said, almost to herself. Then her eyes returned to Alex. "We will leave tonight. You have done nothing wrong. You are not the one to be punished." Alex felt tears sting the corners of his eyes. Relief, fear, and something fragile he hadn't allowed himself in years, all combined. He felt his grandmother's hand on his shoulder, steadying him, grounding him. He wanted to speak, to thank her, to cry, to feel safe, but the words didn't come. Mark finally found his voice, though it was small and shaky. "You can't. This is my house. My rules." Grandma Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "This house may have walls, but it will not have tyranny. Alex is my grandson. He is under my protection now. You do not touch him. You do not speak to him again until you can act like a decent human being. Is that understood?" Mark said nothing. He knew, in that moment, that the game was over. There was no threat he could use, no anger he could display that would intimidate Grandma Eleanor. He had finally met his match. Alex's mother, tears rolling down her cheeks, finally whispered, I didn't know what to do." Grandma Eleanor turned to her. "You could have chosen him, but you chose silence. That is not weakness. It is complicity. But we will fix this. Tonight, we fix this. And Alex will not be alone anymore." Alex felt a strange mix of sorrow and relief. Sorrow for years lost, for love withheld, for safety denied. Relief for the first time in what felt like decades that someone finally stood for him, truly, completely. He heard Lena's soft voice from the porch again. "Alex," she had returned quietly, watching from a distance. She hadn't intruded, but she had stayed nearby. The familiar warmth of her presence made his chest ache with longing. He looked at her and nodded faintly, the silent promise to come see her after the storm passed still there. Grandma Eleanor guided him gently toward the door. "Pack a bag," she instructed. "We are leaving tonight. You don't owe anyone explanations. You don't owe fear. You only owe yourself safety and care." Alex moved quickly, gathering a few essentials, his hands shaking not just from adrenaline, but from the flood of emotions: fear, hope, relief, and the bittersweet taste of freedom. Lena watched quietly, her presence steady, giving him the courage he didn't know he still had. When Alex emerged, his grandmother's car was waiting. She opened the passenger door for him, letting him slide inside without a word of reprimand. For the first time in years, he felt the weight on his chest lift, the tension that had been crushing him release. Lena stepped aside on the porch, giving a small wave, her eyes soft and full of unspoken care. Alex's mother stood at the doorway, silent, her tears streaking her face. He wanted to speak, to comfort her, to fix the past. But he couldn't. Grandma Eleanor's hand rested lightly on his shoulder. "It's time," she said. And he knew it was. Mark lingered behind the kitchen door, defeated, powerless. The house that had been his fortress of control was no longer his. Alex's life had finally shifted, pivoted toward safety, toward truth, toward love that didn't hurt. The drive was quiet at first. Grandma Eleanor didn't speak, but her presence was enough. Alex stared out the window, the cold night air rushing past. Lights blurred into streaks, the world moving fast outside while he processed the life he was leaving behind and the life he was stepping into. I didn't know if I could ever do it," he finally whispered, almost to himself. "You did it," Grandma said softly. "You survived. That's the first step. The next steps we take together." The words, simple yet firm, struck a chord deep inside him. Alex felt something open, something fragile and brave and alive that had been dormant for far too long. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was beginning. It's beginning to heal, beginning to trust. It's beginning to live. When they arrived at Grandma Eleanor's home, the warmth hit him immediately. Soft lights, gentle sounds, a home built on love, not fear. He exhaled fully for the first time in years. The bruises would heal, the fear would fade. But the knowledge that he had people who would fight for him, people who truly loved him, would stay forever. That night, as he settled into a room that smelled faintly of lavender and warmth, he allowed himself to think of Lena, of her promise to wait, of the small sparks of care and love he had always cherished. For the first time, he allowed hope to feel real. He knew the path ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, reminders, echoes of the past. But he also knew he would never walk it alone again. Grandma Eleanor had stood. Lena had cared. And he had finally found the courage to step into a life that didn't belong to Mark or to fear, but to him. The night outside was still cold, still dark. But inside, Alex finally felt a warmth that was stronger than any fear he had known. Warmth built on protection, love, and the quiet courage to say, "Not again." Alex stepped outside into the cold night, feeling the air hit his cheeks like tiny needles. His breath came out in white clouds that disappeared too quickly, like the warmth he wished he could feel inside. Lena was waiting, leaning against the porch railing, her coat wrapped tightly around her small frame. She looked like she had been standing there for hours, but her eyes lit up the second they met his. Relief mixed with something sharper, anger maybe, at what she had just seen inside. "You shouldn't be in there," she said softly, her voice just above a whisper. She reached out and pulled her coat closer around his shoulders, brushing the sleeve where the dark bruise was forming. Her fingers were gentle, warm, and careful, and Alex felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: protection. Real protection. "I promised Mom I'd stay for dinner," he said quietly. His words felt weak even to him. "She wanted me there." Lena shook her head, her long hair falling over her face. "Your mom wants an image, not the truth. That's not peace, Alex. That's silence. And silence lets people hurt you. You don't deserve that. Not ever." Alex felt a pang of guilt, but also gratitude. He hadn't realized how much he needed someone to see him, not just the bruise, but the weight of years of being overlooked, ignored, and beaten down. Lena always saw him, always had, even when he thought he was invisible. I don't want to make things worse," he said. "It's Thanksgiving. I can handle one night. You can handle a lot of things," Lena said softly. "But why would you have to? One night, 2 nights, 10. It doesn't matter. You shouldn't have to bear this alone." She stepped closer, brushing his sleeve again, her hand lingering for a fraction longer than necessary. "Come over after dinner. I made pecan pie." "Your favorite?" Alex's chest tightened. Pecan pie. The memory hit him like a wave. He remembered her 16 flour dusting her hair, giggling as she tried to fix the burnt crust, the way she'd always laughed when he insisted it was perfect anyway. He wanted to smile. He wanted to believe in that warmth again. But he couldn't. Not fully. Not while Mark was still in the house. Not while Mom looked the other way. He nodded, barely audible. "I'll come." Dinner inside was unbearable. The sound of Mark laughing, eating loudly, bragging about meaningless achievements, it felt like nails on a chalkboard. Every movement he made sent a wave of tension through Alex. His mother kept her head down, forcing smiles and small nods, as if pretending to enjoy the meal would make the bruises invisible. The mashed potatoes sat untouched in front of him, gravy thick and steaming. He forced himself to eat, chewing slowly, listening to the hollow sound of clattering silverware and the laughter that never reached genuine warmth. Every now and then, Alex caught Lena's gaze through the kitchen window. She stood outside under the dim porch light, arms crossed, watching him like she had always done, like she never really stopped caring. That look of quiet concern, of protective fierceness, made him swallow the lump in his throat. She had always understood him in ways no one else could. "Alex," she whispered through the glass when no one was looking, "don't forget, come after dinner. Don't let them win tonight." He wanted to answer. He wanted to tell her everything he felt. Everything he'd been holding back for years. The fear, the anger, the pain, and the shame of letting them hurt him. But the words stuck. He could only nod faintly. When dessert was served, his mother smiled weakly. I made pumpkin pie too. I thought, she faltered, trailing off as Mark elbowed her lightly and laughed. You made enough for everyone, don't worry. Alex didn't eat. He couldn't. The smell of cinnamon, sugar, and butter only reminded him of the warmth that used to exist in this house. The warmth that had long since disappeared. Mark kept talking, loud, taking over the conversation, making jokes that weren't funny, laughing too hard at his own voice. Alex's hands tightened into fists under the table. Finally, after what felt like hours, Alex quietly stood. I'm going out, he muttered. No one asked where he was going. No one followed him. They didn't need to. Everyone had learned that he was small, invisible, easy to overlook outside. The cold air hit him again, and he exhaled sharply, letting the tension leave his body in a small puff of mist. Lena was waiting still, leaning against the railing, her eyes narrowing when she saw him flinch at the cold. She moved closer and draped her coat around his shoulders without asking. You're shivering, she said. And it's not just the cold. He tried to pull away, but her hands stayed gentle, holding him in place, steadying him in a way he hadn't felt in years. The weight of her attention, her care, wrapped around him like armor. He felt a strange warmth spreading through him. A mix of longing and relief. I never stopped worrying about you, she whispered. Her words weren't loud, but they echoed inside him like they carried more weight than anything Mark or Mom could ever say. Alex's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, but the words caught. He was afraid he might cry. You don't have to say anything, she added, her voice soft, patient. Just let me be here with you for a moment. That's enough. He nodded. He leaned slightly into her coat, letting her presence comfort him. It was strange the way years of pain and fear could dissolve into a simple touch from someone who cared. He remembered the times they had spent together as teenagers. The laughter, the comfort, the secret moments where he felt safe, like the world outside didn't exist. Lena had been that safe space, and she still was. They stood quietly, letting the cold bite at their faces while the house behind them remained loud, filled with pretending and shouting. Alex closed his eyes for a moment, imagining he was back in his room as a kid, with Lena sitting on the edge of his bed talking about school, about dreams, about life far away from the house that hurt him. But reality hit when the back door creaked open. His mother's voice, tight with irritation, cut through the night. Alex, get inside. Grandma is here. Alex stiffened. Grandma, she had never come early. She hated chaos, shouting, unpredictability. She liked control. And she hated Mark. Lena stepped back instantly, her hand brushing his arm one last time. I'll be here later, she whispered, a promise in her voice. After dinner, I'll wait for you. Alex's stomach twisted. He wanted to stay with her. He wanted to run away and never look back. But Grandma's voice held weight, authority, and love. She was the only family member he truly trusted, the one person who could make him feel safe without needing to say it aloud. He turned toward the house, bracing himself for what he knew was coming. Grandma Eleanor stepped inside, her presence commanding, her eyes immediately locking on his arm. She didn't say a word, but her gaze alone was enough to make Mark pause mid-step. Alex felt a small surge of hope. Someone had finally noticed. Someone was finally seeing him. Grandma moved closer, her movements deliberate. She didn't yell. She didn't ask questions in the moment. She simply looked. The silence she brought was heavier than any shouting. Alex's mother faltered, trying to explain, but Grandma didn't need words. She saw the bruise. She saw the truth. Alex felt a wave of relief mixed with fear. Relief because someone finally noticed. Someone finally cared. Fear because he knew change was coming. And in this house, change had always been dangerous. Mark shifted uncomfortably under her gaze, but he didn't step back. Alex's mother tried to intervene, muttering about misunderstandings, about accidents, about family. Grandma's eyes narrowed, and Alex knew that her patience was gone. Her presence alone was a declaration. No more hiding. No more silence. No more pretending. Alex exhaled quietly, feeling like he could finally breathe. The weight he had carried for years, the shame, the fear, the pain. They were all still there. But now there was someone on his side. Someone who could fight for him when he couldn't. And in that moment, standing in the cold light of the porch before he would have to go back inside, Alex realized something important. He wasn't alone. Not anymore. The night wasn't over. Thanksgiving hadn't been saved. But for the first time in years, Alex felt a spark of hope, fragile, trembling spark that told him maybe, just maybe, things could change. And he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever came next, he would survive it. Because Lena had reminded him he could. And Grandma's arrival had promised he would not have to do it alone. The house behind him buzzed with false laughter and empty conversation. But Alex stood outside, letting the cold clear his mind, letting Lena's memory warm his heart, and letting Grandma's presence steel his resolve. This was not the end of the night. It was the beginning of something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a long time. Courage, and with courage came the realization that he could fight back. Even if it was only by staying alive, by protecting himself, and by trusting the few people who truly cared about him. The cold wind pushed against Alex as he walked up the front steps of the house he once called home. It was Thanksgiving afternoon, and the sky was a soft, pale gray, the kind that made everything feel quieter than it really was. He stood there for a moment, staring at the wooden door, listening to the hum of voices inside, the faint clatter of dishes, and the warm smell of cinnamon drifting out through the cracks. It should have felt comforting. It should have reminded him of childhood. But instead, his chest felt tight, like something inside him was warning him to turn back. Still, he pushed forward. He had promised his mother he'd try. And he always tried, even when trying hurt when he stepped inside. His mother rushed forward with a smile that almost reached her eyes. She hugged him quickly, as if she were worried someone might see her being affectionate. "You made it," she said, brushing his hair back like she used to when he was little. "Thank you, Alex. This means a lot." He smiled softly, even though he didn't feel like smiling. "It's Thanksgiving," he said. "I wanted to be here." But before his mother could say anything else, a deeper, sharper voice cut through the room. "So the ghost finally shows up." Alex stiffened. He didn't have to turn around to know it was Mark, his stepfather. The man walked toward him with the same heavy footsteps that used to send Alex running into closets when he was a kid. Mark's presence always carried a certain weight. Like the air thickened around him. "Didn't think you'd have the courage to come back?" Mark said, wiping his hands on a kitchen towel. His tone wasn't playful. It wasn't teasing. It was the same familiar challenge, a warning disguised as conversation. Alex swallowed. "I told Mom I'd come," Mark grunted. "Yeah, after ignoring her calls for weeks." Before Alex could respond, his mother stepped between them with a shaky laugh. "Let's just enjoy today, okay? No arguments." Alex nodded. He didn't want to fight. He never wanted to fight. He placed his small bag by the stairs and moved toward the kitchen to help with the food. His mother had always loved Thanksgiving. She decorated the house every year with tiny pumpkins, orange candles, and a centerpiece shaped like a turkey that Alex made in second grade. It was still on the table, chipped, faded, but still there. It should have made him smile. Instead, it made him feel like he was still that scared kid who never quite fit into the family she built after his father died. He grabbed a cutting board and started slicing green beans. The rhythmic motion calmed him a little. His mother hummed softly, stirring gravy, trying so hard to pretend everything was fine. But peace never lasted long here. Mark walked behind Alex, reaching into a cabinet. The space was small, too small. Their shoulders brushed. Immediately, Mark pulled back with exaggerated annoyance. "Watch it," he snapped. Alex froze. "Sorry." Mark stepped closer. "You always take up too much space." Alex didn't respond. Silence was safer. Silence always protected him. But silence didn't protect him this time. Mark shoved him, not hard enough to throw him, but hard enough to send Alex bumping into the counter. The knife fell from his hand, clattering loudly against the floor. His mother spun around. "Mark, stop." "I barely touched him," Mark said, raising his hands. "He's being dramatic." Alex tried to steady his breath. His arm throbbed where the counter had caught him. He bent down to pick up the knife, but Mark grabbed his sleeve, yanking him up sharply. "I said watch where you're going," Mark warned, his voice low. The same dangerous tone Alex remembered too well. Pain shot through Alex's arm as Mark's grip tightened. The bruise would show. Bruises always showed. "Mark, let go," his mother whispered, her voice small and desperate. "Teach him to have respect," Mark said. Alex tried to pull away. "I didn't do anything before he could finish." Mark slammed him backward again, this time harder. Alex's back hit the cabinet with a dull thud. He gasped at the sharp sting spreading across his shoulders. He expected his mother to scream, to run to him, to finally say she'd had enough. Instead, she pressed her hands to her temples, trembling with fear and frustration. "Alex, please. Don't start anything. Don't start anything." The words hit him harder than Mark ever could. Alex stared at her, disbelief tightening his throat. "Mom," he said quietly. "It's Thanksgiving," she said quickly, her voice breaking. "I want peace. Please just let it go. Family first today. Just today." Family first. Like she always said, like she'd always chosen. Alex's chest tightened until he couldn't breathe properly. He wasn't family. Not really. Not in the way she meant it. Mark walked away, muttering to himself. His mother turned back to the gravy, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. Alex stood there alone, rubbing the new bruise forming under his skin, fighting back the heaviness pressing against his ribs. He wanted to leave already. He wanted to run outside and breathe air that didn't feel poisoned. But then he heard a voice he hadn't heard in years. "Alex." He turned. Lena stood in the kitchen doorway, framed by soft golden light from the dining room. Her long hair fell over her shoulders, her cheeks flushed from the cold, her eyes wide with concern. She still had that gentle expression. He remembered, the one that made people feel safe without her saying a single word. For a moment, he forgot about the pain. For a moment, he forgot about Mark. Lena stepped closer, her gaze dropping to his arm. "What happened?" Alex swallowed. "Just clumsy." She didn't believe that. She never believed the excuses he used to give. "Can I see?" she asked softly. He hesitated, but she gently lifted his sleeve anyway. When she saw the bruise dark, harsh, fresh, her breath caught. "Alex," she whispered. "He did this." He looked away. "It's fine." "It's not fine," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and sadness. "It's never been fine." Her reaction made his chest warm in a way he didn't expect. Lena had always cared more than anyone else. Even when they were teenagers, she was the one who handed him ice packs, listened to him vent, and told him he deserved better even though he never believed it. Behind him, his mother pretended not to hear. Mark pretended not to see. But Lena saw everything. She reached out and touched his hand. The warmth of her fingers spread through him. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Not with him. Not when he's like this." "I promised, Mom," Alex said. "She wants the family together. She wants the picture of a family," Lena replied. "Not the truth." He looked up at her, surprised at the boldness in her voice. She wasn't the quiet, shy girl next door anymore. She had grown into someone stronger, steadier, someone unafraid to say what she felt. Before he could reply, Mark shouted from the living room, "Dinner. Stop hiding in the kitchen." Alex flinched. Lena saw it. Her eyes softened. "Come see me later," she whispered. "I made pecan pie. Your favorite." The memory hit him like a warm wave. Years ago, when they were 16, they tried baking together. Lena spilled half the sugar, burned the crust, and still made the best pie he had ever tasted. They laughed all night, covered in flour, their faces close enough that he could feel her breath on his lips. But he never kissed her. Life got complicated. Pain got louder. Now she stood inches away, offering the same familiar warmth. He nodded. She slipped out the back door quietly, leaving the smell of winter behind her, Dinner was a nightmare. Mark laughed too loudly, ate too quickly, bragged about things no one cared about. His mother forced a smile, hoping the night would stay calm. Every time Mark moved, Alex's body tightened in. Reflex. But it didn't matter what happened at the table. What mattered was the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. What mattered was the sharp knock on the door. Everyone turned. His mother frowned. Who would come now? She opened the door and froze, standing on the porch, wearing her long beige coat and holding a small dish of cranberry pudding. Was Grandma Eleanor. She wasn't supposed to come until tomorrow. She hated unpredictability. She hated chaos. She hated Mark Dot, and the moment she stepped inside, her eyes went straight to Alex, straight to the bruise that hadn't fully hidden beneath his sleeve. Her face changed. Her posture changed. Something fierce and absolute rose in her expression. The room went silent. Alex knew Thanksgiving wasn't over. But the truth everyone had tried to hide was about to surface. Because Grandma had arrived early, and Grandma saw everything.